I've been doing issues around FGM for this my 4th year now. I was working previously as a communications and a programs officer at Maendeleo organization. At that time, Maendeleo was an implementing partner for the UN joint program on the abandonment of FGM. Actually, the 7th joint program. And I was a focal point person for Maendeleo at UNFP and UNICEF. And that's how I got involved around issues of FGM, because I was coordinating 11 regions in this country. And my main responsibilities were training of trainers, that is at the community grassroots level. As you know, Maendeleo is a grassroots organization. And therefore, I was charged with the mandate of training the community on issues and the effects of FGM. Also, training them on the anti-FGM law, that is the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act of 2011. Also, conducting community conversations, having discussions with the communities so that we could understand the root cause of FGM, because it is crucial before you enlighten the community, you need to understand where they're coming from so that you can know your entry point and how you can create rapport and dialogue about it. So I worked in different regions. I worked in West Pokot, I worked in Mount Elgon, Kuria, Meru, Isiolo, Tana River, Marsabit, Baringo. Yeah, there are many regions. So we worked with various sects of people. We worked with the Council of Elders. We worked with religious leaders. That includes also the imams and the sheikhs, and also the Christian religious leaders. We worked with teachers, we worked with the local administration, we worked with women, men, and Morans. Yeah. So that is how I got involved in this work. For me, it started as a job. My turning point was one day when I visited a community, Mount Elgon actually, and we're having this community conversation with the members, a representative of the community. And one woman volunteered to share her experience. She's a survivor. Because for me, I was curious to know what happens. Yes, I come from a community where FGM is practiced, but I'm fortunate enough I've not undergone the practice because I come from a town. I come from around Meru town. So for me, I heard about FGM actually while at Maendeleo. And I was wondering, who does it in this 21st century? So that lady volunteered to share her experience with the rest of the team. And this is a woman who was married into a community that practices FGM. Herself, she comes from a community that does not practice. So after getting married, she comes to this community and there are all these pressures for her to undergo the cut. But she was adamant about it because she does not identify with the practice. So she gets pregnant and she delivers her firstborn child. And then after that, after 1 month after delivering her firstborn child, she undergoes the practice. Because then she was vulnerable and the community and even the in-laws were for it because they always regarded her as a child. Because if you have not undergone the practice in these communities, you don't have any say in the community. So, but for you to attend the ceremonies of the community, for your voice to be heard, you have to undergo the cut. And that is how she got into it and she was cut. And for me, the way she took us word for word, she remembered it like it was yesterday. For me, that was a turning point. And that is how I began. I'm an activist, but a technocrat at the same time. So that's how I got involved in all this. There are very few communities in Kenya that do not practice FGM. That is Luo, Luya, Teso, and Turkana. Those are communities that do not at all practice FGM. Yes. But the rest, there's some percentages. Could be even up 1%, 10%, 98% with the Somalis and the like. But the four, not 0%. The Guardian Global Media Campaign to End FGM. It was launched in 2014, that is October 2014, by His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. And the Guardian, we are working with media houses, and we want to amplify stories on FGM because we know so much is being done by the civil society organizations in this country. Some started like early 80s, for example, like Maendeleo, they started doing it a way back. But there's a communication bit. All this work does not come to the front because is it newsworthy? What is the content? Is the media involved? And you see most of the development partners may not really fund communication as a standalone. And if they fund communication, it's maybe the act of airtime, but not really facilitating journalists to tell that story up to the end of it. So when Guardian comes in, it's giving journalists a platform where they can share the story, the whole story, and also gives the community the upper hand, and also the civil society organization working around it, so that from the implementation of the activity and towards the entire process is captured. So that is how I got involved. We have right now 3 sessions of the campaign. The first one is the African Award by F.W. Dukone, I do not pronounce that name, where the African journalists who cover features, stories on FGM can submit their features and stories for judgment, and then the winning journalist will eventually get 1 month training at the Guardian in London. So that's the first component. The second component is where we are giving the media in Kenya grants so they can be able to amplify stories on FGM, and we can know about what is happening at the community, because that is one way of abandoning FGM. Then the third component is whereby we're enhancing skills of the young activists, like what we are doing this week, so that they can be able to be empowered and have the knowledge, so that when they're doing their campaigns, they can do sustaining campaigns and having content with the community. So the activism, the academy, it is concentrating on young activists between the ages of 22 to 30 from different communities in this country where FGM is practiced. I'm glad to report that we have amazing participants who have shown a lot of enthusiasm in what they do, and they're willing to learn. And some of them even watching the films on what FGM is, because we could be saying FGM, but they may not really understand. So, like on the first day, we showed them, the doctor showed them a film of a young girl undergoing FGM, and some of them, even you could see the reactions from their faces. They were really touched about that, and even we had some discussions with them, and they were like, this gives me the strength even to push harder, because now for sure I know what it does. When the doctor told them about the effects and all that, she took them through on what FGM is, and then Dr. J.B. Kilimo told them about the stereotypes and needs. And we were privileged to host Christine Njala, who works at the Office of Director of Public Prosecution, telling them about the laws around FGM, in particular the Prohibition of FGM Act 2011. So all this information, they feel empowered, because some of them say, when I started, I just knew the effect from maybe a survivor, or because I've been affected because maybe someone I knew passed on due to when they're undergoing the cut. So that is how they got involved. But they were not empowered enough with the content to know how to approach even the community, how to create rapport and dialogue with the community. So they feel empowered, and for me, I'm happy with that, because we have a variety of activists here. We have poets, we have musicians, we have different people who the activism it's broad. So they will use their different platforms to pass on the message of FGM. Actually, right now, they have already started forming their work plans, and they're engaging one another to have a discussion on, can we team up and can we do this and this event. So they have already started challenging themselves of, fine, I'm getting this knowledge, so what next? So we will be having a session on doing work plans, and some of them have already started drafting, and they're engaging us and asking us, what do you think about this activity? How can I go about it? So for me, I'm optimistic that by the end of the academy on Tuesday, we are going to have amazing work plans that we can share with other stakeholders involved and see how we can help the activists, maybe through resources, getting for them resources so they can be able to push their activism. In the future, I know we're going to be having many activities. I may not say we'll do one activity as a group maybe in the next 2 months or 3 months. Eventually we will, God willing. But I know they're going back to their communities with an agenda. They're going back in the community with opinions on how they can work better. They were doing activism before. It was not structured. Right now, they're making structures to see how best placed the campaigns they're developing are sustainable, are impactful. So I know we'll have actually some of the Morans here, the young participants from Kajiado, they're organizing a huge, they're calling it Moran Festival. And they're hoping to do it with our support, of course, and the rest of the stakeholders in October. So after this, I'm going to have a discussion with them and see how we can structure it and see how we can bring all the Morans from these different communities so they can work together, because Morans have a voice, and that's amazing. I believe we have goodwill from the government of Kenya, because the setting up of the Anti-FGM board is indeed a testimony to that, because the law says that we need a board in place, and the board is in existence, and as I understand right now, they've been given funding so they can be able to be on their feet and work. So the government of Kenya has been very supportive. Even with our constitution also, it gives us the mandate, it gives us the strength, because it says that we should not do harmful cultural practices. So government has been supportive. Other leaders, of course, from different communities, some have been supportive. But unfortunately, others are not, because some communities, the politicians think if they mention FGM, they're going to lose their votes. So when some of them, actually even some are activists, so when they get into power, they shelve the issue of FGM. That's no longer an issue I need to be focusing on, because if I talk about it, then it means all my votes are going to disappear and I'll no longer be in power. But what is it? We should look at what are these effects we are talking about in terms of FGM. You'll be amazed by who was at the front of passing the anti-FGM law, and that was the former MP from Mount Elgon, Kapodi. And he was courageous enough. He's a man, he was brave. So for me, what I would really request other leaders who are shying away of talking about FGM, don't drink how do you say it? Don't preach wine and take, or what was its opposite. Do it, because it is affecting our young girls, our mothers, it's affecting women. It's a development issue, yes. There are many challenges along the way, and actually this is what we are telling participants, the activists, that don't think it's a plain sail. There are a lot of challenges. People are going to discourage you, people are going to block you, people will actually walk away when you're talking, because this is a cultural issue, and some people are not ready to reform. So I remember a scenario where I went to a place called Loboi in Baringo County, and we are having a community conversation. So how we did this, first we had a local explain to them the effects of FGM in their vernacular language, and it was an interesting discussion. And then once the facilitator was done with his elaborations, then I was given a chance to talk. I don't come from that community, so I could only speak in Swahili. And when I stood up, I asked them, is there any question? Have you understood what the facilitator has been talking about? And they were all in agreement. So I prompted them and asked them, so why do you practice FGM? If you have understood all this and you're all agreeing it is bad and it has negative effects, why do you practice FGM? An elder stood up. The setting was a council of the elders, women, men, and the young people. The leader of the elders stood up and he told me, young woman, are you cut? And he was asking me in an audience of around 60 people. And I was like, no, I'm not. Then he was like, where do you come from? And I told him I come from Mary. And he was like, some of these things you want to know, we may not be in a position to talk in front of all these people. So tell us your questions. We are going to answer you and we are going to work together. We understand it is wrong, but we are not there yet where we can stand and have these discussions with all these people around. So we as the elders, we are going to sit at one corner. You tell us what you want to know. The women will do the same, will gather the youth, all these sets, and then we will answer your questions. And that's what they did. So I went around and telling them what I want to know, and then we'll gather back. So we had a breakout session, and they deliberated, and it was very engaging at that time. So when we came back, when we gathered back, they each had a representative to speak. And after speaking, one of the questions I had asked them is, who says FGM should be done? Is it the man? Is it a woman? Is it the young man? Is it the girl? Who is responsible? And everyone was saying it is the other. The man will say it's the woman. It's actually women who are circumcised. As you ever seen a man who is a circumciser? So the women will say no, it is the man who insists. The young girl will say it's the man. The young man will say it's the girl. So everyone was placing blame on the other. And I asked them a question. Don't you think you're all responsible? It is a collective responsibility. You can't say it is because of one or the other. You all have a role to play. And from that point, we had a conversation. Sometimes they will block you because they want to destabilize you so that you are afraid and go. But it is about commitment and courage and content. For me, those are the things that I've put in my head. Courage, commitment, and content. You have those three, you're good to go. The other challenges I've faced along the way are infrastructural challenges. You go to a place like before, like when I was going to the communities, some of these places were so remote. You go, even the vehicle you're using a four-wheel vehicle, drive vehicle, and still you're stuck. Maybe it rained, so you have to push the vehicles. You can't get there on time because these and these challenges. Some places are so remote you wonder, my God, is this still Kenya? Issues of insecurity. One of my regions I was covering while I was doing this work at the grassroots level is Samburu. And I was charged to work in Baragoi. And I used to ask people, how do I go to Baragoi? This is when we had that issue of officers who were killed, and I'm like, I can't go there. In as much as I have the will and I'm committed to do my work, is that insecurity aspect I cannot overlook. So there's some other issues, factors that hinder an activist from doing their work. I would like to tell them, one, FGM is not, it's not for the communities that practice. Don't say meow. It is a collective responsibility, as I said. Most of people, especially the Nairobians, are not even aware FGM happens. We are ignorant of that fact. Yet FGM happens even in Nairobi. You go to Isili, you go to Mathare, some of these informal settlements, FGM is happening here. People come from all the way to London. They come, they're taken to Isili, the act is done, they're taken back. And we are like, no, it happens, Huko interior, it doesn't. FGM is a collective responsibility. We need to know what it is. We need to know how we can help the communities get out of it, because it is dragging our economy, it's dragging us behind. But luckily, at least Kenya has shown improvement among the African countries that practice FGM, because according to the Kenya Demographic Health Survey of 2014, we are at 21%. Other countries are at 68, others are at 90s, and so on. So we are leading the way, and that is one of the reasons actually we, the Guardian, we chose to have the Media Academy in Kenya, because it's a pilot program, and so that we can see and gauge how beneficial is it for the activists. And after this, we'll be sitting down with the partners and see how then we can be able to replicate this in the other 28 countries in the world that practice FGM, because it is something we have to do. So I'll tell Kenyans that don't leave it to other communities and say I'm not affected, because you are in a way. I always tell people, you assume some things and say, I'm in Nairobi, this can't happen to me. Maybe your mother, you have a son, you have a daughter. Maybe your daughter one day might get married to a man from Samburu, and they will tell the girl that, well, if you're not circumcised, then you have to undergo it. Or maybe your son will go and get a woman from those communities, and they'll be like, wow, mom, the girl, I don't know what happened to her, you know. So you may not be a survivor, but you might be affected in a way or the other. So time is now. Let's talk about it. Let's dialogue. Let the politicians agree and we have a discussion. Let them support. Don't bash people and say those activists, those activists. It is an health issue. It is a development issue, because it has also been cited under the proposed Sustainable Development Goals that it is a development issue and all that. So let us work together.